We just flew in a helicopter to like 5 different spots. Jake's like, you know, come up to Alaska, we'll do some cool stuff. Time to test the Mavic 3. It's 4:30 in the morning. We're gonna drive 300 miles to Valdez and try this drone out. I'm really excited to see what it can do. We're gonna meet up with a friend of the helicopter and go to some amazing places to see what this drone's capable of. We made it to Valdez after 5.5 hours of driving. So you can see the helicopter right there. So we're gonna be going in. Got everything packed up, pared down as much as possible because weight is a thing. And I am super excited to see where we can go and try this drone out. Stop number 1, right out in the middle of everything that's awesome. And right over here is the face of Columbia Glacier. So good spot to fly drones. I mean, do you not take your drone off of an iceberg that's sitting on the shore when you have one sitting around? So initial thoughts are like the battery life is great.
Battery life's great.
It really goes, and it moves fast.
I mean, it feels like you're in the air forever.
Right, yeah.
Like you just kind of keep flying and you keep getting shots. And even when you're down at like 15%, you still have like 10 minutes left of flying, or what was that, 18%? I had 10 minutes left of flying. It was crazy.
You kept going for a bit. When I was like, I'm at 10%, it needs to land right now.
Yeah, usually.
On the
I was
R2S.
flying over there. I was flying over here. Basically got all the shots in this area and let it hover for a bit so we could get some beauty shots of it. No problems. Like it was just, and the image transmission was clear the entire time. Like completely see, you know, it was just easy to fly.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it's right around freezing. It's not the coldest temperatures I've ever flown a DJI drone in, but it is handling the cold, no problem at all.
No major voltage drops for sure.
Yeah, so far, really good. Now we're gonna get back in the helicopter and go to location number 2. Good landing spot, but with a really great ice cave that we were gonna fly some stuff through. the drones, tested them out. The Air 2S did fine. The Mavic 3 had a couple little issues that were kind of weird.
It was cold, I don't know. It was a weird CPU issue.
I mean, we're way up in the mountains in the beginning of winter in a glacier ice cave in Alaska. I don't know why anything would be cold, but
I mean,
it's just
warm, right?
It's totally warm. Anyway, so now we're moving to the next location, which is the number 3. Number 3, location 3 coming up. So we did go to spot 4, which was the top of this couple 1,000-foot cliff, and I dove my FPV drone down it. We shot a few things with the Mavic 3, but this is kind of boring. You probably don't want to see anything like that. And then we also went to spot 5, which was literally a mountaintop just big enough to land the helicopter on. Also, probably not something you'd be interested in seeing. We didn't shoot anything with the Mavic 3 there because we had run out of battery at that point. Even though we had 3 batteries, we had been doing a lot. But we need to talk about the Mavic 3 as a drone because it is incredible. The performance, the imaging quality out of it is absolutely amazing. There's a few caveats, and there were definitely some things that we did testing with the beta firmware that were difficult, which is the same thing I've run into with anything I've tested that's been on beta firmware. There's always things that you have to work through. But the drone itself is incredible, and the imaging quality is amazing. And just to be clear, this is an initial thoughts review from my having a chance to use one up here for a week when Jevin came up. DJI didn't send me one. I'm not being paid for this review. I bought and paid for my own Fly More combo that's on its way. But I wanted to give you my initial thoughts after using this drone for about a week here in Alaska. When it comes to video, the new 4/3 sensor is incredible. It gives you up to 5.1K at up to 50 frames a second, which is amazing. In a future firmware update, we'll even be able to shoot 4K up to 120 frames a second because who doesn't need more 4K 120 frames a second in their life? I don't really use it that often, but when I do, it's really nice. And because this is a larger sensor, it does do really well in low light and gives you really clean footage. But not only that, just all the footage in general looks really rich, really detailed, and grades beautifully. Just with some simple adjustments, it's amazing how well this footage grades. And this is not the Cine combo, this is just the standard combo. I'll go into my thoughts about which combo you should buy or which version you should buy in a little bit. But the video quality coming out of this is really, really nice. And one thing that really stood out to me that I really liked, because this has a mechanical aperture, which, by the way, when you're shooting video in light that is changing constantly, a mechanical aperture that you can adjust remotely is massive because you don't have to come down, land, adjust your ND filter or anything like that. It just makes it so much easier to be able to shoot in changing dynamic lighting conditions. The new starburst and the flaring on this lens, I actually found to be really nice and really liked it. Now, some people don't like any flaring. I kind of like a little bit of flaring. Maybe I'm old school. I just really enjoyed the flares coming out of this camera. And one of my favorite things of all is to get reflections off of stuff. And so you see here the reflections coming off the helicopter. Because of the aperture was being set down quite a bit because it was bright light, it just gives you these really nice little starbursts off all the reflective surfaces of this helicopter. And I love the colors. The Mavic 2 Pro with the Hasselblad color science was really great. I really enjoyed it. But this definitely seems like a step up or a step forward. It has more dynamic range than the Mavic 2 Pro did, and it also has a lot more bandwidth. In other words, it went from 100 milliwatts per second to 200 now. We get a lot more detail, a lot more information in the video, and that's not even using the Cine version, which gives you just ungodly amounts of detail. And then, of course, because it is a dual camera system, there is a zoom lens on there, and we definitely need to talk about that because that was both interesting and also different, I guess, is the way to say it. The zoom lens works pretty well at 1x and 2x because you're using the main camera, but then when you jump to 4x, it jumps to this weird sort of digital cropping, and then it jumps to 7x, which is when it switches to the second camera, which is a 1/2-inch sensor and a little lens system built in there. And that was okay. The quality of that is decent and usable, and I think it'll improve as DJI gets the firmware updates out there. But beyond that, to me, it just really wasn't very usable. I don't really know what you would use it for, except for maybe, like, search and rescue situations. But as a filmmaker, I don't see myself using this very often. Maybe the 7X, because the quality on that was decent, but it is fixed at f4.4, so low light is definitely out when it comes to that. But yeah, very interesting. Not something that I see myself using that often, but the regular camera, the Hasselblad camera, is really nice, and I loved working with that. When it comes to photos, this drone packs a big punch. They're 20 megapixels, which is similar to the Mavic 2 Pro and the Air 2S, but the size of the sensor makes a very big difference in how much dynamic range. Here you can see an unedited photo, and then here you can see how much information we're able to pull out of that photo. And the dynamic range just basically gives you a lot more ability to be able to expose and be able to get information out of your shadows and your highlights without having to pick between one or the other. And the dynamic range at this is 12.8 stops, what DJI says. I believe it. It certainly feels like right about 13 stops of dynamic range. The photos that this drone produces are really incredible and really nice. And I think as a photographer and anybody who's looking for better quality drone photos, this drone is going to be a fantastic piece of kit for them. Then we come to obstacle avoidance, which is a massive upgrade DJI has made on the Mavic 3. Now, I'm not going to say it's quite on the level of another drone manufacturer out there, but it's close. And the obstacle avoidance on this drone is a huge leap forward from the Mavic 2 series. It just is, it works incredibly well and sees a lot of different things. Now, the obstacle avoidance for us actually caused some issues because it was difficult to land it back on the boat. Every single time we brought it back, we had to switch it completely off. But even then, I don't know if we were able to switch it completely off because of the beta software we were running, but it worked really, really well. Anytime it came close to an object, it would try and find a flight path to one side, the other side, up and over, and it made it a little difficult, but it also proved that it worked really, really well. And with that is a big feature that I think maybe hasn't been covered as much, and that's the safety of return to home. I'm not advocating that you should fly way out of line of sight. There are legalities and all sorts of stuff that might be different in your country than my country, but I'm not supposed to fly out of line of sight without a specific waiver. And this drone, I would have a lot of confidence in it coming back to me, returning to home if I lost connection somehow or something happened, because of the obstacle avoidance and because of its ability to plan flight paths through objects. It's absolutely incredible. We need to talk about battery life and range because this drone takes a big upgrade in both of those areas. Battery life is now 46 minutes is what DJI says. Now, you never get the full battery life that a manufacturer says because they always keep some in reserve. And in my experience, and Jevin and my testing and flying up here, we were getting a good 41 to 42, 43 minutes, depending on the conditions we were flying in. There were some places that it was cold. There were some places where it was extremely windy. And so it just really depended. But having 40-something minutes of flight time on a drone is kind of mind-blowing. It gets to the point where you're kind of like, okay, so I've shot everything. And what else do I shoot now? Because I still have like 30% battery left and I am out of ideas. And coupling that with the range, which again, I'm not advocating you fly out of line of sight, but the range of this drone is incredible. And here's where the solid signal link to be able to go that far comes in handy. If you're flying in crowded, dense environments where there's a lot of interference or there's trees or things that might be temporarily between you and the drone, that signal link is going to stay solid through all of those situations, which is extremely important and extremely handy if you're flying in tough environments like in cities or other places like that. This drone will maintain a really solid signal link to the remote control and give you solid video link back so you know what you're doing and you can see what you're trying to film. Another thing that I absolutely love about this drone is the fact that you can now recharge via USB-C with something in power delivery. So that means if you're out in the middle of nowhere like we were, and you have a battery pack that has USB-C with power delivery, you can recharge the drone. And on our road trip to Valdez, when we stopped and flew an entire battery worth chasing the car, looking around the valleys and the mountains there, it was nice to pull it in, hook it up to my battery pack, and have it start recharging until we got to the helicopter, and then have a fully charged battery again by the time we got to the airport. If you watched any other videos, you know that none of us were able to test intelligent flight features because those features will be added in a firmware update in January. Believe me, as soon as my drone arrives and as soon as that firmware update happens, I will be putting together a video about it because I want to test the active track with the obstacle avoidance and see how good and how well it performs, maybe in competition with another drone manufacturer out there. But DJI has a long track record of handling active track, of handling intelligent flight modes. They're obviously programmed in all of my other DJI drones that I have now. So I have no doubt that they're going to be fantastic and that they will be improved from the versions that are currently on my Air 2S or other DJI drones. We do have to talk about some of the downsides. Now, some of these things were just things that I wasn't able to test because it was on beta firmware. But there are a few downsides that you need to be aware of. One is they're using the DJI Fly app, which by itself isn't bad, but I do wish that it gave us a finer level of control over the drone. So we could adjust the smoothness settings, the stick, expo, all of that to get the drone tuned exactly the way we like to fly it. That being said, you can fly the drone really well, and the Fly app and the new remote controllers operate really well, but you have to learn how the controller operates in each of the different flight modes. So it just takes a little bit of training and practice, but I wish they'd given us a way to fine-tune all of the settings because this is more a professional drone. And then the zoom lens. The zoom lens isn't really usable for anything in professional applications. Now, that could change in a future firmware update where DJI has been able to pull incredible performance through firmware updates and adjust things like almost nobody else I've seen. So that could change. But currently, as it is, it just isn't that usable for professional filming situations, I should say. Now, there are other professional situations where the zoom lens would absolutely be useful and usable. And the last downside is the price. This is an expensive drone. This is not a hobbyist drone. This is kind of right on the edge of even being a prosumer drone. But this drone is aimed at people who are doing this videography, photography for a living. And you want the highest amount of image quality in a small, compact, portable drone. And on that, this drone delivers. But at $2,200 US or $2,900 US for the Fly More kit or $5,000 for the Cine kit, this is really pushing the envelope of price. But again, this drone is not aimed at a hobbyist or somebody who's just going out there to shoot for YouTube videos. I did order mine, I paid for it myself, and it's coming, which I'm excited for. But again, this is my job. Not just YouTube, but I work for a lot of different clients in different places in the United States. And honestly, a small portable drone with the image quality the Mavic 3 has is going to be a game changer. Now, I did not get the Cine version. Either one of these packages of drones is going to be fantastic. Personally, I got the Fly More kit because I think it's the best value. And if you have the budget for it, I would recommend you do the same. If not, I will have a video coming comparing this to the Air 2S very soon. I will be doing a comparison between this drone and other drones on the market, especially comparing the Mavic 2 Pro and the Air 2S and a blue drone that might make an appearance.
So definitely stay tuned to the channel if you're interested in seeing how those stack up. Honestly, I still think the best value for drones out there right now is the Air 2S. It is fantastic image quality and a great price point. And if you want to see a video about that drone, click or tap right here. I put together a short playlist that will walk you through my thoughts on that drone. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I'll try and answer your questions there. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.